Hello guys, it's Mo. Welcome back to Reading with Mo, and I'm here today with a long overdue video, and that is my top favorite books that I read in 2020. And so I think it's very fitting actually that I'm gonna just talk about the 5-star reads, and I had exactly 20 books that I read in 2020 that were 5 stars. So instead of narrowing this down into my top 10, I decided we're gonna go with the full 20. So I'm not gonna talk too much in depth, but these are all books that this blanket statement is probably gonna apply to all of them, where I really enjoyed reading them. They left some type of emotional impact on me while reading the book. Some of these, it has been a little bit longer than others that I have read. Some of these were like over a year ago now, so my memory may be a little bit hazy, but they're all books that I plan on keeping around and books that I plan on, hopefully, sometime in the future, rereading again. So these aren't going to be in any particular order. I thought about putting them, ranking them from 1 to 20, but I decided that I was not going to do that because, I don't know, even just trying to pick one of what would be like my top book for last year is just too much for me right now. So we're just going to go with a random list of all of my 5-star books for 2020. This is the stack of them right behind me here, so we're just going to go in this order. So first we have Sula by Toni Morrison. I was able to read a whole bunch of Toni Morrison books last year, and this was the one that left the strongest impact on me. We're following 2 women who grow up in the same small country town in Ohio. They're 2 black women, and one of them ends up staying where they're at, and one of them ends up moving more into the city life, and we're just looking at just very impactful story about 2 black women in America. Then we have The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. This is a very powerful story written by a man who was wrongly incarcerated and put on death row for almost like 30 years or something like that. And once again, a very emotional read, but very informative about the whole incarceration system in America. We have another nonfiction, which I did read a lot of nonfiction, and quite a few of them did make their way onto this list from last year. And this one is Making Our Way Home by Blair Imani, The Great Migration and the Black American Dream. This one is all about the history of the Great Migration. It takes place from like the 1800s up to pretty close to modern day. This book is just very informative for nonfiction, but also written in a very like easy to read and very interesting to follow way. And I really enjoyed Blair Imani's writing, and I love the infographics and different illustrations that go along with the descriptions of the people that are talked about in this book. Next, we have a book that kind of goes along with The Sun Does Shine, and that's Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. So this was the first book that kind of sparked me into wanting to read a bit more into the incarceration system in the United States. And I also watched the movie for this, which I really enjoyed as well. Both were very emotional to watch. Just watching Bryan Stevenson, he's the author of this book, and he helps to represent people who are on death row, and his story and the story of the cases that he takes on are just very, very powerful as well. Next, we have a duology, and I gave both of the books in this series 5 stars, and that's Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, and then we also have the sequel, which is Parable of the Talents, and I really enjoyed both of these. I had read previously Kindred, I think that was in like 2019, and it was also on the top 20 list for that year, or top 5-star reads for that year, and these books were great as well. So we're pretty much following supposed to be kind of set in similar times, which is interesting, is that this is supposed to be taking place in the 2020s, and a lot of parallels are to things that are happening now, which is crazy because this book was written quite a while before then, and the world has become this dystopian world based off of like different like political things that have happened, climate change and stuff, and I just really enjoyed this duology, and I don't think it's been adapted, but I would love to watch these on screen if someone was able to do it well. Next, we have a middle grade book. It's called What Momma Left Me by Renee Watson, and this one we're following a young girl, and she has lost her mother. We don't know how, but she's living with her grandparents, and I believe her father is gone. but we don't know why he's gone. And this was also a very emotional book, but one that I would definitely recommend. The next books are 3 books I all gave 5 stars. They're part of the same series that I'm sure many are familiar with, and I think I did a standalone video already at some point last year talking about these, and that is the Hunger Games series. I reread The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. I really enjoyed rereading both of them since all of them since it had been quite a few years since I first read them when they first came out, and I was interested to see if I would still enjoy them as much as when I read them the first time, and I was glad to say that they were just as good, and I can definitely see myself rereading them again in the future. I probably don't need to explain too much what the Hunger Games are about, since a lot of people have seen the movies or read the books by now, or at least familiar with the whole dystopian trope that this kind of set off. But it's like a young adult dystopian series. I'll talk about the next 2 together because they are both by the same author, and that author is Kemi Dawn Bowman. We have Harley in the Sky and Starfish, and these are both young adult contemporary novels. What they have in common is they follow a young adult female, like right out of or at the very end of high school, having to make decisions of what to do with their lives. One of them, she wants to go to art school in Starfish, and one of them wants to join, I think, become a trapeze artist, but both of them come from backgrounds where their parents are not supportive of them wanting to make those decisions, and so they have to strike out on their own and try to make it happen for themselves. I just felt like both of the characters in these books were very relatable, and I feel like the stories were told in a very interesting way, and I really liked her writing, so I will definitely read other books by Kemi in the future. Then we have another nonfiction book, and that is A Black Woman's History of the United States by Dana Ramey Berry and Callie Nicole Gross. And this one was definitely very informative, but also nonfiction done in a great way where it's not boring or anything, and I feel like I definitely need to reread this one, but definitely looking at the United States history, but from the perspective of a view that isn't really looked at as much, from Black women and how they're around during different just important events and times that were going on in the United States, kind of like their role in certain things that isn't talked about as much. Then we have one play, and that is For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough, and this is a choreo poem by Ntozake Shang. I also watched the adaptation for this and I really enjoyed it, but I wanted to read the play first, and I definitely will read this again. I'm not someone who's super into plays or poetry or things like that, but for me, this one I really enjoyed. Then we have a graphic novel. There's actually a couple of those on this list, and I love graphic novel adaptations of books that I've loved already, and this one is for Anne of Green Gables, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And this one is adapted by Mariah Marsden, and it's illustrated by Brenna Thumler, with the original author of Anne of Green Gables being L.M. Montgomery, and I really enjoyed the comic style that the artist went with for this. I think it's a very well done adaptation, and I just love being able to add this to my ever-growing collection of Anne of Green Gables books. Then we have a fantasy book, which I think might be the only one that made it onto this list, unless you want to count like the Hunger Games and Parable of the Sower, but those are more like dystopian sci-fi type of books, and I guess this one is kind of like science fiction and fantasy as well, now that I think about it. This is the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a very complex book. It took me a minute to get into it. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel at first, but I just really love the world building. This one is hard to explain too much, and I feel like it's best to go into this series not really knowing too much. At least that's how I experienced it, and I feel like if I were to again, I would feel the same way. Next, we have what is definitely my favorite nonfiction book for last year, and that was The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. This book didn't even feel like I was reading nonfiction when I read it. This reads like a fiction book, and I feel like if you're someone who's hesitant with nonfiction, I would definitely recommend this one. It's taking place from 1915 to 1970, when more than 6 million different African Americans moved from the South to different parts of the United States. And so we follow one person that goes to California, one that goes to New York, and I think the other one was Chicago. during different parts of that period and seeing kind of what motivated them to want to leave the South in the first place, and then their journey to their destinations, and then what life was like after that. I just really enjoyed this book, and I need to read Cast by Isabel Wilkerson that came out last year, but you can just tell like her writing is phenomenal, and you can just tell it's just so well researched and well written. I will read anything that she comes out with in the future. Then we have The Night Diary by Vera and Indani. This one is a middle grade book, which I don't read that many, but two of the ones I read last year both made it onto this list, so maybe it's something I should be reading a little bit more of. In this book, 12-year-old Nisha, she lives in India in the 1940s, and she has just started a diary, and India had just been freed from Britain and it became two countries, Pakistan and India. So people are having to flee and move to different places. Like her journey with her family was just very scary to read, and it's crazy that these just were based off of actual true events and experiences that people went through during this. And I feel like even though this is marketed towards the middle grade age range, this is something that no matter what age you are, a book that you can definitely read and get into. Then we have another graphic novel, and that is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is the adaptation of his book Long Way Down, which is a young adult, like contemporary, hard-hitting contemporary book, but it's told in verse, I believe that one was. It's been a while since I read the original material that it was adapted from, so I don't remember for sure. But the art is by Danica Novgorodov. In this one, we're following a young kid, and his brother has just been murdered, and he's deciding whether he wants to take revenge on the person who he believes killed his brother. So we're following him on the elevator ride in his apartment building and down to the ground floor, and it ends up making a stop at each floor. And at each floor, someone different gets onto the elevator. This is just kind of more supposed to be like figuratively, that is someone from his life, and they have an impact on him making the decision of whether he is going to take revenge on his brother's killing or not. This book was definitely very emotional, and which is surprising because for graphic novels it's not something that I say at all usually, but I definitely felt like that with this one. Then we have what I think is the only mystery thriller that is making my list for last year. I just don't very often give mystery thrillers in general super high ratings, although I do enjoy them. I feel like I read so many that not a lot of them really are like surprising or shocking, but they're still very entertaining. And this one is When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and a lot of people debate whether this one is even like fully in that thriller mystery genre, or if it's kind of more in just like contemporary drama. I feel like I could see validity in both sides, but I definitely feel like this is more on the like suspenseful, unsettling side, if that's like a genre. We're following our main character. Her name was Sydney, and she lives in Brooklyn, and she feels like her entire neighborhood is becoming gentrified, and all of the black people are moving out, and new white people are moving in, taking their places, but it seems like they're mysteriously disappearing. Like no one really knows like what's happening or where they're going after they have left. So she thinks maybe something a little bit more is going on that people are trying to keep hidden from the public. And so in this book we're finding out, is this really true, or is this all in her head, or what's really going on? And so I really enjoyed this one. It's definitely one I feel like I need to reread again. I had listened to it originally on the audiobook, and I feel like if I had read it physically, I probably would have even enjoyed it more, just because I would have been paying more attention to it. But I did enjoy this one. Like I said, I know it's not for everyone, but for me, this was just definitely something that I enjoyed. And then the very last one for last year of my 5-star reads was Dear Reader, The Comfort and Joy of Books by Kathy Rensenbrink. And this book is all about her relationship with books growing up, and there's so many good like recommendations for books, and not just like growing up, but contemporary books as well. I just really enjoyed reading this. She kind of perfectly fit stories in her life and relating them to different books that she's read during her life, and it just all worked together perfectly. The writing, the recommendations, I could not recommend this book more. I highly recommend it to anybody who likes reading books that are themed around other books. So those are my top favorite books of 2020. They were the best of all the ones that I read. I think it was 190 books last year, so out of all of them, these are the 20 that were my favorites. These are the ones I gave 5 stars to. I don't know what percentage that is, but I'm sure it's not a large percentage of the whole reading I did, but I'm glad that I did read these books. Like I said, I would love to reread all of them at some point in the future. Let me know down below in the comments what was your guys' favorite book or books that you read in 2020. Was it any of these? And that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! And the next one actually is going to be the worst disappointing books of 2020, so definitely subscribe if you want to be notified right away when I post that one.